Welcome to the webinar presented by ChainBytes. I'm your host, Steven Seagal. Not true. So my name is Mike Salvi. I'm here with Eric Grill, CEO of ChainBytes, and Keith Smith, who has quite a few titles at ChainBytes, director of most and all operations. So here today, we're going to talk about all the different steps in starting a Bitcoin ATM business. We're going to go over locations, buying a machine, setting up the machine, registrations, KYC compliance, all the fun stuff, cash handling, and marketing. So, but before we get into all that, make sure you follow us. Go to ChainBytes everywhere, Hippo, BTMs everywhere. And yeah, here we are. All right, so let's get started. Eric, welcome.
Thanks. Nice seeing you again, Mike.
Nice to see you again, too. Keith, welcome here. It's always great to see you, too.
Yep. Excited for this conference. How about you guys?
I'm very excited for the conference. He's referring to the ATM conference, which, you know, we've been in the Bitcoin ATM business for a while. I joined with ChainBytes years ago, and my first year into the company, I found out that there were conferences for ATM operators, which to me kind of made me chuckle a little bit until I went to my first one. Those guys have a great time. There's a lot to learn. So we'll be on.
Yeah, they do.
They really do, man. So if you want to find out what that's like, come out to Vegas next week. If not, we'll tell you all about it later. So want to get into the first step in just getting a Bitcoin ATM business started. You can't do it without a Bitcoin ATM machine. So let's talk about buying a Bitcoin ATM machine. So Eric and Keith, you guys will both be able to answer these questions first. Keith, I'm going to go with Eric first, just because we'll go in alphabetical order. All right, so when it comes to ChainBytes, we have two different types of machines. What's the difference between one machine and not? Actually, I read that a little wrong, so maybe we can go back and say there are two types of machines that you can purchase: buy and sell Bitcoin ATM machine. So which do we offer?
Which is a one-way or a two-way machine, and I always suggest to people that certainly for your first couple machines, get two-way machines. Don't get a one-way machine. You need to have at least one two-way machine in your fleet, so that if people want to sell Bitcoin, that you're able to take that opportunity. Some of the other differences in the machine is obviously the top screen, where you can do advertising either for your machine or for the store that it's in, or pretty much anything you want to use it for. The other piece of that's a little different with all the machines is the type of lock that you put in there. You're probably going to want to get the S&G locks put on there, which is the industry standard locks for armored car services. They're not going to be able to service your machine. You're going to be stuck doing it yourself if you don't have them. A lot of people think they're going to retrofit them later, and it definitely costs you a lot more money later, and it's much, much more difficult to do. Most locksmiths aren't going to touch it. So, you know, if you do have one of those machines, you can reach out to us. We can probably refer you to somebody to help you, but it's a challenge. So I would just suggest doing that up front.
So up front, it's something that you don't have to use right away, but once you do start using armored car service, so it saves you the hassle of having to get it done later. It makes sense.
Yeah, and it's more secure. I mean, it's literally a safe inside of a safe. So the machine itself is very secure, but this thing, I mean, we had a machine where the lock wasn't working properly, and I don't even know if Keith have you ever gotten into that machine?
No, the only way I'm going to get in is with like an angle grinder, and like the good old fashioned cut through the steel. That's the only way that I'm going to get in there.
Yeah. So that they're very secure. We've witnessed break-ins before, and it's very hard to get in through the front of the machine. But then when they find, oh, I got through all of that, and oh my God, there's another thing in here, and that thing is, they've got to open the whole thing up to even get to it. So for a security standpoint, that's the case. But armored car services will require it. So I certainly suggest getting it up front. And those are the main differences: the one-way, two-way machine, and the top screen and the S&G lock at Adam.
Okay. So for the one-way machine, meaning where you could just buy Bitcoin from the machine and that's it. A two-way machine, and you can buy or sell, you can cash out.
Correct.
Right. All the ChainBytes machines are two-way machines, but we also offer support for Gen Mega, which are one-way, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we do support other hardware, which don't have the hardware capacity to do the two-way, but our software will support it. So we're able to put it on Gen Mega machines and use them one-way.
Okay.
And there's a couple of other manufacturers out there that we can put our software on. Same thing. They do the one-way.
So if another so if you have an operator that already has different machines and wants to import our software, and not only can it be done, but can you talk about why an operator would want to do that? And essentially, it's like, what should you look for in a software as a Bitcoin ATM operator?
Sure. I mean, if you're doing fleet operations, you want to, a lot of the other software out there, you have one dashboard per machine, or it's very kludgy. Whereas our software was designed with the idea of having a large amount of machines that you can manage from your console, and one-stop shop. So a lot of people will purchase another company and get their machines, and then they can roll over that software. We can install our software on that hardware. That's kind of how we started developing software for other hardware. We saw people, cheap machines out there. Okay, well, let's support the hardware as long as the hardware isn't of very low quality. There's very cheap Bitcoin ATM machines which we can't support just because they have an Android device and the hardware itself is very low quality, and we just don't want to support that and all the problems that go with it. We don't want to inherit somebody else's headache. There's a reason, probably a good reason why they're out of business and the machines weren't working, besides the software. So, we don't support those, but a good quality hardware like a Gen Mega and American Kiosks, things like that, we can certainly support that hardware.
You're on mute.
You're muted. You're muted.
Yep, not anymore. Speaking of the hardware, how big are the machines? Are they the same size as a traditional ATM machine? Like, how big are ChainBytes machines?
They're about what, 5'4", I think.
Well, there's one right behind me without the top screen on it, so I'm 6 foot.
Okay.
So you can kind of.
Well, no, yeah, it's 5'4" and 3/8, I believe was my measurement, because I see if it's going to fit in my car for Vegas.
Yeah, and the footprint on the floor is 24 inches by 24 inches. So, that's usually what people are concerned with in the stores. Is it going to fit in here?
Yeah, the width.
Not that, that you can take the top screen off like I have on this one if you don't, if you have problems there, but typically you can fit that in. They're a little bigger than some of the typical traditional ATM machines, but it depends on which ones. Like there's some very small ones, there's ones that are much larger than ours. So it's sort of in the middle there.
Okay. If they're bigger, is there any special power requirements?
Nope. No, it's a computer with the same sort of power drain that a computer has. You're running the computer 24/7 with a monitor, so it's the same as if you ran your computer 24/7. It would be the same drainage.
Okay. And what about so you mentioned there was the machine behind you doesn't have a top screen, a top monitor. Why would an operator want one?
Why would
an operator want to put a top display screen on their monitor, on their machine?
Only if space was a restriction, that may be a reason why they don't put a top screen. Otherwise, it's a good idea. I mean, it's advertising. You're in a store, even if you're not going to utilize the advertising for yourself and sort of promote your machine on how to use the machine. I mean, you could, in theory, some operators have sold that real estate and advertised other things. I don't particularly think that's a great idea. I think if you're in the store and you have that real estate, you should use it and use a video to show people how to use your machine. And that's more effective. You put brochures up on it as well as having that screen. Certainly like laundromats and things like that where you have a captive audience, they might be sitting there just watching and, oh, that looks pretty easy. Let me go try it. And there you go. Okay. You got your return.
Cool. Simple process for, maybe Keith, you can elaborate on this a little bit. What's the process of buying a machine?
The process of buying a machine? Well, yeah. You'd want to contact us first of all, and then you'd want to speak to one of our representatives, either Mike, Amzie, myself, and we explain to you how our machines work inside out. How the software works, the dashboard, the process of where. A lot of people think, everything's so automated that you just put money in the machine, get your Bitcoin. No, there's an entire business behind that business that involves cash collections, moving money through banks and exchanges, and there's compliance and all these things. And we'll explain all that to you. So typically it takes about 30, 40 minutes. We can explain everything. Everybody's got a different idea of what they want to do for a business. So we can answer your personalized questions. So, get in contact with us, and that'd be the first steps.
All right. So there's a buzz on the street the ChainBytes has been working on something and cooking some things that they I don't know how much we want to talk about, but there's some cool stuff going on out there. I know there's 2 AI components already being tested out there. So what is it that's even how much you want to talk about what's on the horizon?
Sure. I mean, the one is what's called in computer science, the traveling salesman problem, which is how do I visit all my machines and collect the most cash in the least amount of time? So we have that that's being built into the dashboard and beta tested at this point. And then we have a project that we're working with a compliance company on to identify scams. As we all know in the industry, whether it's the gift card industry or any money service industry, there's scams and people are being scammed. So how do you identify that? So certainly part of that is a good compliance program, training your people, but why not utilize technology to look at patterns of other scams? And we have software that is going to help identify those scams as well, called ChainBytes, actually.
Yeah, and the traveling salesman, I use this frequently. So when I'm planning out the week, the day for tech work and cash collections, marketing and everything, basically the whole idea is it takes 30-40 minutes just to sit there and plan out going to all these different Bitcoin ATMs in the region, and you've only got X amount of hours a day, so you have to maximize how productive that can be. And right off the bat, saves me 30-40 minutes right off every morning. That saves me time, but then it also does it more efficiently than I would have planned in many cases. Not always, but most of the time it does, and that saves me hours. So it's when you compile all those hours that you save, it really is. It's amazing piece of software. I have to give it to you.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the components is it uses Google, so it knows sort of the time of day when it's going to be busy. Like that's a factor, and so it takes all that, and it took us a while to build it, so that it was really took all those inputs and came out with a good result of here's your most efficient route. And I know I see Keith using it all the time, and he'll kind of update his route and just to make sure, hey, does anything happen to my route? Has something changed? Because things change, and Google Maps is aware of there could be construction going on now, and so now you're not going to make all these machines. So you want to capture as many machines as possible in the least amount of time, so it's able to do that. So it does it in real time.
Well, that's huge because to find time is next to impossible. So to be able to proactively find more of it in the beginning of the week, that's going to be huge, especially for operators because there's a lot to do. And then the scam part, I think that's really going to be that's going to be interesting for compliance.
Yeah,
I think it's going to make things a little bit smoother. But so transitioning into compliance, we just saw in 2024 some rules change, and without getting into legal advice or anything like that, what is it that operators on the KYC and the AML side, what is it that they need to know as they're walking into this business?
I would say that the rules changed. I'd say that the interpretation of the rules maybe have changed, and what they're looking to enforce and the way that they're doing the enforcement. The way they on the federal level, the way they do it is a Title 31 audit. Again, this isn't legal advice, but what the FinCEN uses is the IRS. They'll come out, they'll audit your AML program, make sure that you're following your AML program. Well, making sure you have one to begin with. Make sure that you're following that sort of the processes internally. It's a pretty thorough audit. You certainly learn a lot out of it. They test sort of what it is that you're doing there. So, those sort of things. I think where things have sort of changed is, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds in compliance, but all like on the travel rule and where you need to collect certain things. And, not everybody's in agreement there. It's still a little bit vague. Certainly from their standpoint, they think that it's not vague, but a lot of these agents don't necessarily understand our business, and so they're used to going to casinos where they have accounts and there's other things going on, and when they come to here, this is sort of an animal that they haven't dealt with yet. So I think it'll be an educational process for both sides of them.
Okay, so it's safe to say training is essential, something that operators need to do.
Well, training is required. That's one of the requirements of running a Bitcoin ATM is training and providing a proper training log and documenting the process, and the compliance officer is responsible for doing that. So that's one of the things they certainly check.
Okay. One sec. Okay.
So I see Sam
Third
was
part.
asking about Mexico and compliance in Mexico.
Yep.
So again, I'm not going to give legal advice, but I can, we do have some operations there in Mexico, and I can just talk to that. There isn't really any definitive rules there. They have the tech law, which doesn't, in theory, doesn't apply to Bitcoin ATMs. What I would suggest is just following what America's doing as far as AML. Follow that, and eventually Mexico will have something in place, and it'll probably model what we have here in the United States. So if you're doing it already, you won't really have any problems. But that's all I can say about that. As of right now, there really are no rules in Mexico defining this that I'm aware of.
Okay. Before I go
Well,
into
so
the
when I
next,
say not
she
really,
also
I mean,
yeah, I was
yeah.
gonna say she has
So what I mean is, every country has agreed to some sort of anti-money laundering, regardless of the Bitcoin ATMs. It's not Bitcoin ATM related. So anytime you're dealing in cash and things like that, there are some rules in place that you're already going to have to conform with. So that's what I mean. But there's nothing specific for Bitcoin ATMs. There's nothing. Well, there is for crypto companies, but that's more custodial, and that's sort of like the way in the United States on a state level they're more concerned about consumer protection versus anti-money laundering, and so those sort of things are in place there. But it's pretty gray. It's pretty open. So it's tough. You'd have to talk to an attorney there, and it's not clear. And what I would do is talk to the banking commission there in Mexico and sort of tell them what you're going to do, like we do here. We send what's called no action letters. We tell the state, here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be operating in 30 days, and if they have any issues with it, they'll come back to you. So you just tell them, here's how I'm going to be operating. And
Gotcha.
I think that, again, not legal advice. I can't tell you that, but that's how I would approach it in Mexico.
We did have one question, which you just closely answered. Is do you need to register on the state level? You mentioned presenting things to the state, so yes.
Depends on the state you're in the United States. In Pennsylvania, where we operate, again, I'm not legal advice, but we sent letters to Pennsylvania. They're clear here that unless it's government issued fiat, that you don't register with the state as long as you don't involve a third party. And that's we used to call it Texas guidance, because Texas was sort of the first one to put that rule out there. Like, hey, listen, you're not. It's just like a vending machine. You're getting it right away. There's no consumer protection risk because you're getting what you want right away. But again, it's state by state, and it's not always clear. Some states are very clear, very difficult. Like New York and California now have put in some very rigorous and difficult compliance regulations, and so you'd have to talk to an attorney about how you're going to be compliant with it, because I've spoken to the regulators and they're not even clear. They have these rules and they're trying to figure out how to implement them, and they're not even clear. Some of the rules are just impossible to comply with, and I asked them and they don't have an answer for that. So I don't have an answer then either.
Okay. We had a question about compliance, but then I do want to answer one other question that was asked in the chat. But before I get to that, third-party audits. So it's a requirement, has to be done. Who can do that for you as an operator?
So a third-party audit has to be done by a third party, someone. They technically can be on your team, but they can't be the compliance officer. They can't be the person that wrote the program. They have to be somebody that can look at it and I prefer to use somebody completely outside of the organization just to get a new set of eyes on it, and so that's one of the requirements that federally we have here is once a year risk-based assessment, third-party assessment of your compliance program.
Okay. All right. Moving on to locations. All right. But actually, before we do that, the question that was in the chat was, how simple is it to how do we start using the screens? What are some of the specs, and can we put our own creative things on the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. You can put anything you want on the screen. I would say be careful how you're sharing the video card with the other part of the machine. So some people have come up with some very intricate and 3D oriented videos. They're not going to perform as well as you'd like. There's a way to do that. You'd have to add another computer in there that would just simply operate that. But out of the box, you can put anything you want on there. Certainly static pictures like you see going on here, not a problem. You just put them on. The videos, again, you want to be careful. It's not a high-end video card. It's not designed for like really intricate videos and things like that. And if you want to do that, you can. It just requires like a little Raspberry Pi, putting it in the middle there and running it that way, but out of the door. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So moving into locations. Here's a question that came in. It's a fun one. What is the best location? Right. So let's get as close as we can to what would be
All
the
right.
best
Well,
location.
high foot traffic location that's convenient to get to and it's convenient to park. Your customers, they tend to be a little older sometimes, and they're not tech savvy, and they're not going to want to park a couple blocks away, parallel parking, and then walking with a bunch of cash, across town. They want to be able to park, get out of their car, the least amount of steps into the door as possible. So, our best locations have parking. Also, best locations are what you market. So, if nobody knows that you've got a location there and they don't know to get Bitcoin there, and then you might have a best location sitting there that nobody even knows about. So, there's a lot of factors. I can tell you which ones don't work. People don't like to be, imposed upon when they're eating, and people don't want to impose upon people when they're eating. So restaurants tend not to do good. Malls, and now this is different. Like it may perform in some other countries outside the U.S., but U.S. malls are on a downhill. But they're also you're paying prime. You're paying for prime real estate, and you're never going to see the return that you would at a local convenience store. So it's like mom and pop shops, mini marts, convenience stores, gas stations. Those are the prime locations you want to be targeting.
Is there a time frame where you'll so if a machine isn't performing the way that you want to, is there a time frame before you'll move the machine to a different location? Do you see that
Usually,
happen?
usually after 6 months, it's either one of two things: it's the location, or we're not doing enough marketing. So that has to be identified. After 6 months,
Okay.
if you're not seeing some action on that location, you've got to realize where you have to identify where the problem is. Now, and we've had locations that didn't produce until after a year, and they're some of our top producers. And it always comes down to marketing. So even if you're doing online marketing, you like the key is people seeing that that's a place to get Bitcoin. So they might go out looking for another Bitcoin ATM, and they see the sign that says buy Bitcoin here. They're going to that location. Now, if it's a picture of a gorilla and it's Gorilla Bitcoin ATM, right? It's a picture of a gorilla. They're not going to identify that as a place to buy Bitcoin. They're going to think that they have stuffed gorillas at that place. So what you're marketing is Bitcoin. In fine print, you can have your name on there. Like it doesn't have to be fine print, but it doesn't have to be. This is the name of our Bitcoin ATM company, because what you're doing is you're marketing the Bitcoin. So I really think now there's some convenient locations I've seen where we're at the busiest intersection outside of the city, and it's a great location. And I was so sure that that location was going to work out, and it had so much high foot traffic, and it did squat. And I couldn't really figure out why. Well, the reason why is because a lot of people that stop at that location are people that are coming in through town, or people that are commuting, and they're only stopping there because they got to get gas. They're not the locals. The locals are going to that mom and pop shop 2 blocks away at the stop sign, and they go there all the time, and they know the guy that works there. Plus, the guy that works there, these good locations, he's helping with the machine, and he's walking people through how to use the machine. Why? Because he wants people coming back. He wants them to know I'm a friendly owner to the store, and so we build these relationships with locations that have such people. It's a two-way relationship. It takes two to tango, and when it comes to this business, it does too. So it's good to have somebody there that's acting as a Bitcoin ATM salesperson, because we're driving customers to their small business. Whereas, you get these big corporate ones that are on a major corner, they don't care anything about the machine there. Okay, they're getting a little bit of revenue, and it's a drop in the bucket compared to the rent that they pay for the place. Some of these places are paying like $15,000-$20,000 a month just to rent that corner. So a couple $100, that's chump change. Now a couple $100 down the street at mom and pop shop, that's something worthwhile. And so they'll invest their time to help people out. And so it's about the locations. There's no rhyme or reason. It's about getting as many locations as possible and building them up, marketing them, and then just kind of figuring it out. And if a location isn't going to work, it's either not convenient, or there's no population nearby, or you're not marketing. So it's your own failure is the reason why you're not making money. That's usually the number one reason. But you can pick bad locations. I mean, you don't want to. If all there is cows and corn, then all you're going to get is cows and corn.
And no Bitcoin.
No Bitcoin.
No Bitcoin. So it sounds like there are certain things to avoid. So just like you said, a restaurant or a bar, or in the middle of a farm, those things are factors for sure, and keep them in mind. But it really sounds like, and I'll make these numbers up, but it sounds like 30% location and 70% what you're putting into it, right? So that's really what it sounds like. And I think the bottom line I'm hearing is these are not set it and forget it type of machines where, oh, we got the best gas station, we have the best whatever, it's open 24 hours, we have the crispest coffee. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And actually,
again, he's talking about here in the United States. So
Yeah.
again, this works a little differently elsewhere. Malls certainly work in other countries better than they do here. Like you said, we haven't had much success in malls here in the United States, but elsewhere, malls are more utilized than here. So
yeah,
and then gas stations aren't utilized elsewhere like they are here. People use them differently. So it really most of what he's saying is relevant here to the United States and wouldn't apply elsewhere.
Which is a great transition into a question that we got, because while it's more related to compliance, is ChainBytes ready for AML KYC adaptation to the European market, like visual recognition to avoid fraud?
I saw that. So there's two things to that, right? So first they want to outlaw facial recognition altogether, and then the same step they're also talking about like identifying people through. So can we do it? Yeah, we've experimented with it, we've played around with it, but we don't focus on that market. So until it's in place and they say, hey, go, but it has to be clear, right? You can't say facial recognition is illegal, but then we also want you to do it. So they're gonna have to be clear on what it is that they want out of that. And so I'm a little unclear on that question. Are they talking about making it illegal, or? Yeah.
If we have a customer that's in the European market and they've spoken to their lawyer, and their lawyer has a clear idea of exactly how it should be done, and then they come to us and say, "Hey, look, I want to put dozens of machines all over here," we will get it done.
Yeah,
we will build it for you, but we're not going to be liable for it. That's why you got to talk to your lawyer.
Yeah, it's tough. Europe is tough with, they have privacy laws, and then if you have a camera, you have to disclose that there's a camera, and then there's some rules on capturing information, where it can go. So it's very difficult. So I can't answer that question as broad. It's not just one thing, but if an attorney for one of our operators there said, hey, this is what we're doing and we're clear on it, absolutely, we support that, and we've done it. We've experimented with it. We don't do that here in the United States, and we haven't done it in Europe. But if that's something that's required, we'll certainly be doing it again.
Well, the person who asked the question definitely knows what you're talking about, because he said it is a thin line. So it's quite a discussion. Before we move into cash handling, you brought up rent, Keith. So I just wanted to ask a question. Came in. It was just what's standard rent that an operator would pay to a location?
This is a case by case basis. I mean, depends on the location, depends on the geographic region, depends on what you personally negotiate with the person that owns the landlord. I mean, I've had some do percentages. Well, guess what? Percentages are the first 6 months in a percentage. You're sitting there and you're building up this machine. You're not seeing much. Well, that landlord's starting to get pretty salty, right? They're getting a little feedback there. But I'm getting feedback from someone. But to rewind before that distracted me. So you don't want to start off top dollar for a location. You really got you got to go into this as a business relationship with the location owner. You have to explain to them you're not going to be making money. Okay, yeah, everybody thinks Bitcoin, you're making lots of money. Okay, no, in the beginning, you are spending a lot of money to get people to come to this location to establish it as a business location. So they've got to work with you in the beginning, and then from there, once you've got a successful location, then we can pay more, okay? Because like we can afford to. After 6 months, and this is what I tell people, I'm like, hey, I'll give you a couple $100 a month, and then we'll see how this works out. And at the 6 month mark, we're gonna make a decision. Like, if you wanted more rent, are we going to be willing to pay more rent, or are we going to keep it at this rent, or are we going to pull the machine? So I don't like to get locked in on locations where I gotta stay there. Because you don't want to have a loser location. You could take that machine and put it at another location, and then bam, right away it just starts generating revenue. And you don't want to have that machine in a warehouse, because then it's just sitting there collecting dust. So yeah, I mean, you want the best locations having a location to begin with. You got to get your locate. You just got to get the machines out, get them deployed, and putting the time and effort into generating revenue, and then you see it happening, and then you can negotiate the rent accordingly, because everybody's going to be different.
To
Pay rent
answer
on time.
that question though, in specifics, like $250, $300, depending on your market to start with, is probably a good starting point. Like I said, in 6 months, if that machine's taking off and it's a hot location, you don't want to lose the location. We've paid, I think some of our locations are making over $1,000, $2,000 a month. So it's depends on the location. But we're happy to pay more money for it, as you should be as an operator, if that location's doing well. The best thing we just had this conversation a few hours ago. Like one of the best predictors of a location being successful is the alignment with you and the owner, and the employees. If the owner and the employees tell you, when somebody asks me questions like, I don't know anything about that, don't bother me with that. That location is probably not going to do well, because people tend to do that. Whereas the owner's like, well, here, call this number, I'll call for you. Or even better, they have time to go over and help them. Those locations do the best. We were looking at our top locations, and every one of them, the owner is working there at the store and takes an active interest, has helps the customer,
the owners and
calls
the employees.
And the
So,
right, exactly.
yep.
So if you can align their interests, a lot of times we'll give free Bitcoin to the employees, and part of that is, hey, here's how you use the machine. And once they've used it, they realize it's a really easy to use, and now they feel smart. And so now when a customer comes in and has a hard time, here, let me show you, and they come and they help them. That customer's coming back, and they didn't even utilize your customer support. You utilize what you already have there in the store. So, that's important.
Okay. All right.
It also helps you identify scams. So
yes.
Yeah.
It also just really sounds like the more hands-on you are with the location itself, the more successful it's going to be. That's just what I keep hearing through all this.
You operate each one of these locations like their own individual business and their own individual business relationship. They work like individual businesses.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about what a lot of people like to hear about: cash and handling cash in this business. So what is it? So from an operator standpoint, what does it look like? I mean, kind of take me through. I get to the machine, I unlock it, I take the cash out, I leave. I'm oversimplifying, so you can keep going.
I'm getting blurry. It depends on how you have it set up, right? So you use armored car service, you're not going to be handling the cash. The armored car service is going to be coming in and handling the cash. If you're still handling your cash, you're a smaller operator. That looks like you come to the machine, you put your code into the machine, you dump the cash, you pull it out, you verify that the cash matches what's on the receipt. We've had incidences where people put the cash in the wrong hole. Like, that's a printer, not a and we find cash laying inside there. They call us, things like that. So there may be discrepancies. You want to make sure there's no discrepancy there. Same thing that armored car service would use. Inside the dashboard, there's a reconciliation process. So as whoever's picking up the cash goes through that, they mark it off as reconciled, everything matched up, it's good to go. And then you deliver it to the bank, or you deliver it to a third party, or whatever it is that you're using for your cash handling to flip that and get back into Bitcoin.
Okay. So you mentioned like a cash service business, armored car. Other than the SNG locks or the audible locks, is there any other requirements?
Training. Training.
Okay.
They're familiar with ATMs. This is sort of a new animal. The bigger armored car services aren't as good at this, frankly. The smaller, if you find a smaller, I won't name names, but a smaller armored car service tends to spend the time and money to learn how to use this machine properly. The larger ones have a very high turnover, so you just train this person. 3 weeks later, he's gone and he's not working there anymore. Now, the next guy shows up and goes, I don't know what to do with this. This isn't like any of the other machines that I've dealt with today. What do I do with this thing? And so you got to go through the whole process again. So we see a lot of our operators going with smaller armored car service or cash handling services to deal with that before they deal with it themselves.
Okay. Two more questions before we move into the next part, but this is always a favorite. Banking. So what are some options for operators when it comes to banking?
The smaller, the better.
Okay.
Large banks typically, I mean, this isn't unique to the Bitcoin ATM space. This is just cash in general. You would think banks deal with cash. They don't. They don't like cash. There's high risk in dealing with cash. So what you'll find are credit unions and smaller banks more receptive to that, and also developing that relationship with the bank. That's important, which you don't usually get with one of the larger banks. They'll just tell you to hit the street, just like a regular ATM. Most of those don't deal. There's only a couple of larger banks that deal with traditional ATMs as well, because they just don't like to deal with cash. There's too much risk in it. I could go into the why, but that's how it is. That's the
yeah. It's with all cash businesses. Even I was speaking to a contractor recently that had their bank account shut down for cash deposits, and never had to deal with that before. So, it's hard being in a cash business, but that's where the profit's going to be made. Is if you know how to work in a cash business, you're getting your cut. You're taking a problem. How do you take cash and turn it into Bitcoin? You solve that problem, you get the profit. And there's a way to do it. There always is a way to do it. You just got to be willing to do it.
Yeah, that's starting off. That'll be your toughest point, right? You'll go to one bank, they'll tell you no. A lot of operators are like, oh, I couldn't get a bank. Well, you only went to Wells Fargo. I mean, I could have told you before you went there. They're going to say no. Chase is going to tell you no, don't bother. Start with what I just said. The smaller banks, the community banks, the credit unions, where you're actually talking to people and let them understand what you're doing. And the other thing is have compliance set up. If you go in there and say, I don't have a compliance program, they're also not going to talk to you. I mean, that's insane. So it's like going to a car dealership, say, yeah, I want to buy a car. Well, you don't have your driver's license. Like, come talk to me when you have your driver's license. I'm not. So you need to get that sort of educate yourself about compliance, so you can go in there and talk to them intelligently about, hey, listen, this is the program we have set up. This is how we deal with these things, and you can answer those questions, not look like a deer caught in the headlights when they ask you about your AML program. Go, what does AML stand for? Like, no, you're never getting bank account.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, your compliance program is it's like your owner's manual on how to run a Bitcoin ATM business. You want to study that inside and out, so you know everything that has to be done to stay compliant. But also, you learn something. You're constantly learning, and you're learning more about the business by reading it. And I like to read it over and over, because just it helps me understand and stay grounded in what's right and what needs to be done. If you come back, a couple years later, and you're like sitting there going through, an audit or something, and you're like, oh, I had no clue. Well, guess what? It's a little bit too late. So you want to get
that's
that
also
figured
part
out.
of your internal controls. So it's not just anti-money laundering. That's also part of your internal controls. Like I mentioned, you're dealing with cash. Cash is a very slippery business. So you want to be very careful how that cash moves through the process, that you're handling it properly, that you're doing the proper reporting and things of that nature. So it's not just an AML program, but it's your internal controls as well. But that's sort of all encompassing. When you say compliance, it's really all of that. It's not just anti-money laundering. There's also, on a state level, there's consumer protection. Certain states have different rules and things like that you're going to need to know about. Bonding, it's challenging to get used to it when you haven't been in the business before. But there are third parties that you can talk to that can educate you on that process and help you understand that and educate yourself. And that's the most important thing, is training and educating yourself.
Okay. All right. Shifting gears into supply and source of Bitcoin. So, in the beginning and down the line? How do operators supply their Bitcoin?
Numerous
Centralized exchanges? Typically centralized exchanges. What did you say?
I said numerous ways. Any
Oh,
way you can
yeah.
get Bitcoin, you're going to get Bitcoin.
Well, ideally, the customers come and buy and sell, but that never happens. There's way more buying on the machines than selling. So,
I know
you're
of a
going to be dealing
decent
with
sized operation that sources all their own Bitcoin outside of
Yeah.
exchanges.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the same thing as cash. If there's a will, there's a way. But
Yeah.
typically, people do centralized exchanges, OTC. One of the reasons that we have buy and sell Bitcoin ATMs is we want people. What are you going to charge somebody that's selling you Bitcoin that you can then go and resell? Well, I wouldn't charge them much because I want their Bitcoin. I get that Bitcoin, I can now go resell it, and that helps supply my Bitcoin. So there's a lot of different moving parts, but you're going to find that most people are buying Bitcoin, so it's always going to be heavy in that direction. So it's a demand for Bitcoin. If you can build relationships to get Bitcoin, that helps. It takes an edge off. But centralized exchanges, our dashboard ties right in, so it's on. That's how you protect yourself from any currency risk of
That's honestly
Bitcoin
the
going
best
up or
ways.
down.
What he's talking about is hedging that currency risk. So as people are putting $20 in the machine, it's able to buy that back on the exchange in real time. So you're not taking the fluctuation. You're not losing money if Bitcoin goes up in price, and you got to go buy it back at a higher price. You're locking in that price, but that requires a centralized exchange. You're not going to be able to. It's you could do it now with ETFs out there. You could technically hedge it on an exchange on a traditional brokerage, but that's probably not a great way to. It's a little complicated to do it that way. Joe asked about what's the ratio between buying and selling Bitcoin. Depends on where you are. In the United States, it's almost 95% buying. Very few locations have anywhere where that's equal. Countries like Japan, that's not the case. There's other places where it's maybe 50%. Maybe sometimes it's even more on the sell side. It's odd, but here in the United States, you're definitely seeing more buy. It's much harder to buy Bitcoin in the United States than sell it.
All right. So just as I'm going to answer the question, the train goes by. That's fine. So in setting the machine up, I'm a customer. I just got off the phone with Keith or one of our other sales reps like myself or Ramsey, and I'm happy. We send in payment. How long can I expect my machine to arrive? And then once it's here, how long should my setup process take? Like basically, once I finally hang up and hit send and send you guys some money to buy these machines, when can I expect? How soon can I expect to get started?
So typically it takes depends how you having them shipped. I mean, so most of the time we're doing sea shipping because that's the cheapest way to do it. Airmail you can get it in like 2 weeks, but that's pricey. So most operators look at the price of shipping it via airmail, and they look at sea shipping, and sea shipping here in the United States is about $1,000 a machine, but it takes about 30 days to have it shipped. So 30 to 45 days, depending on the shipping company. Once you get the machine, you uncrate it, you plug it in. We've already got you through the onboarding process while you were waiting. You're probably getting your compliance figured out and everything in between. But you've been onboarded, and it's just a matter of our support has to connect that machine to the dashboard. And then once it's connected to the dashboard, you can take it out and deploy it right away. And depending how you're going to deploy it depends on usually your first couple of deployments take a little bit because you're learning how to deploy a machine. They are 340 pounds, so they're not something you can just pick up, throw on your shoulder, and carry into a store. There's different types of ways that dollies, like we've got some nice dollies where they tilt and they've got 4 wheels, and it makes it so easy to put it in and out of the. It takes me what 5-10 minutes to deploy a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, your first one, you don't know what you're doing yet, so it takes a little bit longer. But in general, it's just finding a location in the store, putting it in, plugging it in, connecting to the internet. A lot of times when people are starting off, they connect to the store's internet, so that's where they sort of struggle with running an Ethernet cable and figuring out how to do that. you're better off getting cellular, a cellular box, putting it in, and then it's literally you come in, plug it in, and it's running, and you don't have to do anything. It's much easier. You don't have any downtime with their internet being down and waiting on them, being dependent
Yeah,
on them.
so
So
I'll use an example here. Had a gas station where the power was out. Drove a long way to get to this gas station, and I was able to do smart empty the machine because I brought a battery pack, charge, plug it in, gave the machine power to turn it back on because the power has been out there all day long. And so then that machine wasn't just sitting there, offline, full of cash, and I didn't just waste my time going there. So, but the reason that was able to happen, the internet router was out inside that store, but it was the wireless internet that allowed that to happen. And it's also important, like we were talking before in another meeting, to have these battery backups because they're giant surge protectors. They're protecting any kind of brownout that's happened because you got all these different electronics that are coolers and everything running inside these gas stations. We just lost a machine because it was and I haven't even told Eric about this yet. Why we lost the machine was actually the entire electrical system in this one location's fried. They had to rewire the whole place. So it was such a bad power surge that knocked out a whole strip mall. And that's why they're tearing up the road and everything. So it wasn't just our machine that got fried, all their electronics got fried. And there was no protecting it. Now, something like that's so rare. That's the first time that's ever happened to us, as far as I'm aware. And so you're never going to be able to protect against that. But we've got it set up so the machine goes out. It's got everything inside the machine for deployment. It's got the internet ready to go, the battery backup. It's got a printer paper. It's been tested. I always test them inside before I take them out on deployment because I don't want any issues out in the field. I want to look professional in front of the new landlord. Look, we come in, we hook it up, it's done, and we're out of your way. And that's how our business is. We're not going to be a high maintenance tenant here. We want to make it as low maintenance as possible.
So I'd like to address just two questions because they're both good. Wi-Fi, we typically don't use Wi-Fi. When I say we use their internet there at the store, we're using Ethernet to their router. We use end-to-end encryption, so there's really, even if they hijack the Wi-Fi connection or something like that, they're not able to compromise the machine. It's literally the recycler itself is encrypted. The messages that it's sending are encrypted, so it's encrypted all the way through the process. So the most they could do is a denial of service where they turned off the internet and you weren't able to communicate with the outside. But even there, we have queues inside there where it builds up. So the minute it connects back to the internet or it's fixed, it's able to sync back up. So it doesn't stop the transaction. What it will do after a while is take it offline just simply because it can't get the proper pricing. But in theory, it could continue to do that. So we don't use Wi-Fi. So when I say wireless, I'm talking about cellular. So we typically use our own cellular wireless connection, and we're not dependent on anybody there. But again, you could use Ethernet. There's an Ethernet port on it. You could use that. You could use Wi-Fi. We certainly deploy them like that as well. But I don't like those. Not because of Wi-Fi hacks and things like that, which we haven't seen that. But we're prepared for it. But simply because it's not reliable.
Yeah, it boils down to the reliability of the store owner's router and their internet. So yeah, I said doing the wireless and I hope I get a commission from this wirelessbox.com, but the wirelessbox.com has these excellent little boxes that go right in and they take care of so many problems that relate to internet issues. And they're what, like 15
right. And they have
bucks
Verizon. And they have Verizon and AT&T. So Verizon, like we had a period where we didn't even realize we had ordered the boxes that only had the one. And I think it was AT&T had an outage in the entire Northeast. And all our machines went down. Like, what the hell's going on? And we thought there was a problem with the account. And no, it turns out it was just AT&T. And it was only some of them. And the other ones had went to Verizon and there was no problem. And so we realized, okay, we should have both on all of these machines. I think initially we just bought the cheaper ones. And now we've realized having the redundancy that I think it's an extra $5 a month or something. It's worth it. Not that's only ever happened once, so it's not
Yeah.
a huge deal, but it's just nice to know that if it's down for whatever reason, it's usually power related. Like you said, the whole block is down, there's no power, and the machine goes down. So you can see the cellular's off and everything's off, and you call the store and they don't answer the phone because the power's out, and you're like, okay, what's going on over there?
So this is a educational plus a little bit of a plug question too, but it's leading into the next one. So some of the features in the software are things that can help an operator run a lot smoother, make their whole operation run smoothly. So, for instance, built into the software, they can automatically pay expenses, automatic payments for fee division, rent report, profitability, vouchers, so like a grand opening or something like that, and then remote management of machines. On the KYC side, what are some of the features that can help help an operator?
Well, we're always adding to it. So, when something new comes out, we look at it, obviously, we implement it. So we're not just, so we manufacture machines, but we also have an operations company. So a lot of what we're doing, we eat our own dog food and try it out. That's why, when we have to, I'm a programmer. If I got to do it twice, that stuff is going to be built into the dashboard. I want to automate as much of that as possible and take the human out of it where you can, or, those sort of problems. On the compliance side, obviously, it'll OCR the photo ID that they're bringing to the machine. We can grab snapshots of the customer in front of the machine. We can do the SMS verification in front of the machine. We can use passports. There's other things that we've implemented that we don't necessarily utilize here in the United States, but as Joe had brought up, the other countries require different things, where you store the data, how you store the data, things of that nature. So we've done those sort of things. When something new comes along, we'll certainly adopt that into the software and automate it as much as possible. We're developing software to identify scams using artificial intelligence, so we'll be rolling that out shortly as well. So that's one of the, I would say, the majority of the compliance related stuff is related to people being scammed or laundering money from scams. And so if we can identify that stuff and do better there, we're going to implement that, and we are.
Okay. Before we get into the last section, which is very important in marketing, I have another question that's wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about this user level location host.
The what?
So for user level location host. So can you tell me more about, like, you build software for enterprise operators, right? So can you touch on that a little bit?
What specifically? I mean, there's a lot of pieces to it. You want to go through all of it?
Well, no, quite simply, like, who's it for? Why you have it? What location host can see?
A location host?
Yeah.
Oh, I see, the view only.
Yeah,
So that if you're rolling it, yeah. So one of our operators is a reseller, and so he's got other people that do that. So they get a view only. They can see the finances on that particular machine, how many transactions that machine has done, but they can't see about the customer. They just see the transaction. They see the broad view. Is that what you're talking about? And then, of course, their payment. Yeah. Because they're getting a percentage of the payment, so they just want to verify that they're getting what they're due, so they can go into the system. They have their own dashboard, the view only, to look at it, but they don't have access to compliance, and they don't have access to other machines. They only have access to what it is that they're allowed to view. Yeah, I forgot all about that, actually. We built that.
But the fact that they can see all that and not just have to take your word or a printed thing that you give is incredible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So for them to go on and check at their own.
So every month, you can see them come in, they'll run their reports and then, and certainly the operator is doing the same thing to make sure that they're getting paid properly. And then there's an auto payment system in there too. So if they're getting a percentage, it's just going to automatically send them their payment, and then they can come in and just verify, am I getting what I'm supposed to be getting? Because it doesn't, I see people at that machine all the time. Why am I only getting this much money? And, they can go in and just see those transactions. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Marketing. So what would you, in your experience, here we are in 2024, what would you say some of the best marketing strategy would be moving forward?
Well, we were just having this conversation. Many operators have difficulty doing online marketing and paying Google and the likes, Facebook, Meta, to get to target ads at customers. And that's because they're hostile to Bitcoin and crypto companies. And that's just how they are. So you have to adapt. And we've also realized where we do online marketing, it doesn't perform as much as our physical on-site guerrilla marketing. And so, you know, what we do is we try to get as much physical marketing at the locations. Everything from little cigarette tube signs where the car bumpers are that prevent cars from going in through stores, to poster boards, LED signs, being creative, even like build a sign frame on a trailer because, you know, figured you can't put a 4x8 sign there. The local jurisdiction says no signs allowed, but guess what? It's on a registered trailer, so you can just put these trailers all over the place. So we put these trailers up, and giant Bitcoin sign, you can't miss it. It's actually, yeah, the biggest sign at the store. So everybody knows if you need to get Bitcoin, you're going there. And what you're marketing is Bitcoin. You're not marketing, like I've explained this before. You want to focus on Bitcoin marketing. So it's physical
Yeah, Bitcoin is the
location.
brand. That's an important point. People want to market the name of their operation. The people don't care. They care about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the brand. So, you know, you can put a big sign up saying who you are. Nobody cares. Like unless you're 7-Eleven doing that, nobody really cares. It's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the brand, and so promoting that and putting that out there. And I would say the number one advertising is, like you said, not digital. It's signage. And when I say signage, billboards. So if you have an Exxon station and they have the price of gas, if you can get right underneath there and say buy Bitcoin here, that, you know, it's expensive to do, but it's worth it. That people see it, they notice it. And my favorite is the dancing guy. All the store owners love this thing. It's the, you know, the jumping. What do they call these guys? The jumping
Tube man.
dancing guy. What is it?
Tube man.
Yeah,
It's
the
tube
tube
man.
man. So it's that
He
tube
goes
man that
like
jumps
this.
up and
Yeah.
down. Yeah, they love
The
this
store
thing.
owners
We don't
love
have
them.
enough of them to put out there. They're always asking us, "Hey, can you bring another one over here? Put it over on." Like, you already have
Every one
one.
of our locations wants one. So that's how popular they are.
Keith, can
Yeah,
you
And
do
and
the
they do get
impression
people's
again?
attention.
Because I don't think people got it. They don't really know what it is yet. Can you do the impression one more time? Thank you.
You've seen them.
That's
See,
really good.
that's the thing. So
I
advertising
see
is
them
about
everywhere.
catching people's
Absolutely.
attention. A lot of these stores, if you look in the front, they've got lottery and they've got all this stuff. You can't, like, if you put a sign up there, nobody's going to see it because it blends in with everything else. These sort of things, you know, the go-go light, the projector on the floor, that's unique. Whoa, what is this thing on the floor here? That's cool. They're going to remember that. And the dancing guy outside, they're going to remember that. The signage as they're going by, yeah, they may or may not notice it. It seems to work really well. So those are
yeah.
definitely
So
The hands
so
on.
the actual physical signs where we have a sign guy that makes signs, a professional sign installer, and it hooks up to electricity in the whole 9 yards. Out of our top 10 locations, 50 all 5 locations that we have signs like that, they're in our top 10. And there's a reason why they're in our top 10. So we know that works.
Yeah, we're not always allowed to do
Okay.
that, but when we are, we certainly do. And honestly, when we're picking locations, part of the criteria is finding good locations. Hey, what are we able to do as far as putting signage in there? If we can't put signage in, and you're relying completely on digital advertising or Google, you know, business and things like that, it's not going to do as well. So you know, we tend to pass on those and focus on the ones where the store owner, you know, it isn't one of these big franchises, a smaller store owner, and they allow whatever kind of signage you want to put in there, and the more the better, because you're attracting people into a store, so they're happy to keep you happy, and you want to make them happy, and that's why that tube guy, you know, they love that. They love when we do that kind of stuff, and you want to make sure your signs aren't raggedy. Like I notice a lot of our competitors, they put a sign up and they leave it there till it's literally like there's one that's been in here for 6 months. You can't even tell what it is anymore. It's just standing there flapping in the wind. It doesn't say anything anymore. I'm not going to buy from that. That like you got to make sure that these signs are kept up.
Yep.
I agree. So it really sounds like hands-on, direct marketing, guerrilla marketing, whatever it is. While I'm sure there's an effective side to TikTok, Instagram, those types of things. Because, and this is what I was going to say. A question that came in was, can you share pictures? In the moment, the first answer I can tell you is go to if you're on Instagram, you don't even need to be on Instagram, have an account. But if you look on the Hippo BTM's Instagram, you'll see every example of all these strategies. You'll see the waving guy. You'll see all the pictures, them just wheeling this stuff in. I mean, and the neon signs, all that makes a difference. With that being said, is there efficacy in platforms like Instagram and YouTube and TikTok?
There it is.
There he is.
There he is.
Look at that. Welcome to the future, I say, and it appears. Bag of
Mhm.
6 million Bitcoin. Didn't work. All right. No, but so is there still some? Would you say that it's efficient to advertise on social media platforms or
Well, yeah,
If
because
they let you.
you've got to build up
If they let you.
SEO for each location, and you do need people to be able to find you. So you do want to do digital. There's no doubt about it. But the thing is, while you're doing digital, so is everybody else. Not everybody else is doing physical marketing. So while they,
Right.
like some of these big companies actually do paid advertising, and they're paying somebody to go to their location across the street from you, and you're the one with the big wavy guy says, "Come buy Bitcoin," and they're like, "Oh yeah, there it is." Well, thank you for paying your Google advertising bill because you just sent your customer over to us.
You'd be surprised how often that happens, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at, oh man, there's so many Bitcoin ATMs. No, they're just helping you out.
No, that just verifies the market. Yeah, we
Yep.
put them right across the street from our competitors, and we take all their customers. So no, that's
Yeah, I need to do more of that. I was just all this. Like, I need more signs. Did we lose Mike? Oh no, there he is.
Here we are. We do have another question that came in, but while I'm reading that, can we talk about vouchers for a second? Offering vouchers to your customers.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
we're doing a voucher campaign right now. Okay. What we're doing is door hangers and $5 worth of free Bitcoin. And so what we're doing is we're paying a guy go door to door in certain jurisdictions to hand out thousands of these door hangers on doors where it says I don't have it here with me, but it's like Bitcoin ATMs are real easy to use. So easy. Go here and type in this voucher code to get free $5 worth of Bitcoin. And the only way you know what works is by trying these things out. We're not sure if this was going to work, but
but he touched on one of the barriers, and that's people don't want to look stupid. They don't like to use new things and be in front of people and look stupid. So as much of that as you can take up front, whether that's through your videos on YouTube, like here's how you use the machine step by step, or door hangers or brochures at the machine. Say it's in a laundromat, somebody's washing their clothes, they'll grab a brochure, they'll read through it and say, oh, this is like 4 steps. That's pretty easy. I can do that. And we made a joke, like in a laundromat, a lot of times we'll see little kids using the machine because the parents will be like, here, go do this. And the kid can figure it out. And they're like, well, if my kid can figure it out, I guess I can too. We see that a lot, actually. It's like, why is a kid using our machine? Like barely tall enough to even and then 5 minutes later, you see the parent with the kid, doing the actual transaction. So it's interesting, but that is a barrier, is that fear of using something new. So you want to provide as much information and make them feel comfortable with it as possible.
Yeah, and there's one of our trailers. So this is actually a trailer that we use to move machines. But when we're not moving machines, a bunch of machines in it, it makes great advertising. Well, as you can
Yeah,
see,
you can see
at
the
this
background there. There's a bandit sign too. So if you look there to the right, there's one of the little bandit signs. But ideally, you see where the racetrack is up there. You want to get on that sign, but in this case, I don't think they were allowed to do that.
Well, this location has a lot of signs. Well, guess which sign stands out the most?
Sure. Sure.
So that's why we parked the trailer there. That I don't. It's not there right now, but it went to another location. Like to cycle them because we know it works.
Sure. All right. Well, looks great. This was fun. This is very educational. Any other points you want to leave before we wrap this one up?
I think we've hit on everything. If anybody has any more questions, happy to answer almost anything.
And if you think of a question after it's over, oh, here's another one. See, ask and ye shall receive. But if you think of a question after the show is over, obviously you can always contact us. Go to ChainBytes.com. Contact us from there. This isn't even a question. This is just a compliment. Man, I like you a lot. Thank you so much for your time. Great team. I tend to agree.
Thank you. I agree.
Thank
We have a good team. And we're trying to get better all the time, and we're trying to improve the software, our compliance, our cash, make it easier for the operator. And that's one, I think the advantages that we have is that we're also operators. So we understand the problems, we've been through the audits, we've been through, the scams, we've been through all of these things. And so we try to mitigate all that and make it harder. And what we notice is when you're really difficult, the scammers tend to go to other operators that aren't so on the game. So if you do a good job of it, you'll see less of it. But you got to be vigilant. It is a cat and mouse game.
For sure. Okay. Well, this video itself, you watched the whole thing. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. If you're just watching clips and snippets, that's okay too. We definitely covered a lot, but make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share. All that stuff's important, and get us in your algorithm, okay? Because this is not going to be the only Bitcoin ATM video you're going to watch. You're going to want to watch another one. So make sure you subscribe. Any questions, go to chainbytes.com. Eric, Keith, any party thoughts?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
All right, bye. All right, thanks, everybody.